much. Well, Donald, man, we'll be talking about conspiracies, of course, and you've been around a long time looking into conspiracy theories. And you know how everything starts out as a theory, turns out to be a fact.
Right. That's right. And they're not conspiracy analyst, I am.
Okay, conspiracy analyst. So what was your first foray into conspiracy? What happened to you where you thought, man, I got to look into this?
JFK assassination. I was a teenager in the mid-'70s, and Mark Lane had a group. Mark Lane was very famous Warren Commission critic, wrote Rush to Judgment. He had a group that was all across the country called Citizens Committee of Inquiry. Mm-hmm. So I quickly joined and became the head of the local chapter in my area. Mm-hmm. And very cool. I got to meet him and everything. And there was... Once he started looking into that, I couldn't close those doors anyhow. So this led to other rabbit holes. I mean, JFK assassination led to RFK and MLK, and then later, especially, things like Waco, Oklahoma City, Ruby Ridge, and of course 9/11. So I mean, it's one thing after another. So I pretty much look into all of them, but I think they're all related to the organized corruption that we see everywhere.
Mm. Well, it takes a lot of lies and lies built upon lies to keep that facade going of these things. I always notice that when an event happens, like, we could take Oklahoma City. They said one, or in the beginning, they said there were probably 2 or 3 guys in a rental truck, and they said there were dogs sniffing around for bombs, and people didn't show up for work. Then all of a sudden, it gets cranked down a couple of days later to one guy, one shooter. That's it. Kill him. Get him out of here. This is the way it kind of is. It seemed like the original reports kind of lean more toward the truth until they start massaging it later.
Yes. And that's what most all my writings reflect that. If people read my hidden history books, and I'm working on my 3rd volume of hidden history now, Hidden History 3, and I'll be sending that off to publisher soon. And I analyze these events. I look for those original reports that you're talking about, because they're very important. Because that's when you a lot of times glean the truth before the narrative gets set. Mm-hmm. And the witnesses change their mind and they fall into line. The JFK assassination, most of the witnesses heard shots from the front. But eventually they wind up, they said 3 shots from behind. That's what I heard. Same thing with 9/11. You had 156 witnesses, most of them firefighters. There were explosions in the buildings. They all heard it. They all reported it. But I have quotes from them in the book that, that's what I thought at first. But actually it was, I didn't realize it was the buildings collapsing free fall. So they do. In all these events, they are originally a lot of truth gets out. And you can see something even like this Uvalde, Texas thing where, the original, was he being traced by the Border Patrol, and all these original, was the door propped open or not? I mean, these things constantly get changed. And then eventually the narrative gets set. Sandy Hook was the mother of a beloved kindergarten teacher at the school. No, actually, she wasn't there at all, but they reported she was. And JFK Jr., which I really was the first to look into that extensively, and I think was another assassination. There was a 9:39 p.m. phone call reported constantly, AP, UPI. I have tape from that a researcher in Texas sent me of the original local broadcast in Boston, WCVB-TV, where they're talking about the 9:39 p.m. phone call over and over again. It turns out a couple of days later, well, no, actually, there was no 9:30 p.m. phone call. So those are the things that interest me, because the Coast Guard actually sent out a petty officer, Todd Bergen, to give an interview about that phone call. And now, that the reporter, she won't answer my emails, and the guy that did it, Todd Bergen, but readers will see in Hidden History 3, he sent me a very interesting email reply, let's put it that way. But so apparently both of them gave an interview about something that they now claim never happened. So,
In the book, we have in our background right now, how many, in the Hidden Histories, how many conspiracies are there in there?
Too many to mention. I mean, I covered... the first volume was from the JFK assassination until through the Obama years. It was actually before Trump, believe it or not. Trump isn't even mentioned because it was published in 2014. So there's a lot in there, and basically, I mean, there's a few things I missed. Readers reminded me. I neglected the USS Liberty, the attack on the Liberty by Israel, which I should have covered. And but I've got most everything in there. I have the 60s and all the assassinations that took then, OBJ's body count, I have in the 70s, I talk a little bit about Watergate and Jimmy Carter. But the 70s are actually kind of boring compared to the other stuff. A lot about Reagan and the 80s October surprise, Iran-Contra. Bush had both Bushes had a big body count. And of course, Clinton, Conspiracy Central, I call the Clintons. And that's, tons. A lot of the book is about the Clintons because you have Ruby Ridge, Waco, Oklahoma City, and then JFK Jr. just alone, in addition to their other scandals. And again, it's true. And a big section on 9/11, obviously. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot of unnatural deaths that are connected to all these events that I tabulate there. A lot of body counts.
Now, don't forget Benghazi.
Right. Well, Benghazi actually, I think it was coming. That was right about as the book was being published. I think I have a little bit about it, but I really didn't get to go into it because there were so many things happening, and the book was definitely written before that. I might have put a mention of it at the end. I can't even remember, but like I said, it was written halfway through the Obama's, I guess, second term, and because it was 2014, and obviously, if it's published then, it was written mostly before then. So, I covered material that I could, and it's just a lot there. I mean, it's hard to keep. But people tell me, you think everything's a conspiracy, and I say, well, yes, actually, I do, because we're being run by conspirators. And this is what they do. This is standard operating procedure for them. It's a way of doing business. I mean, you think of the mafia, and I think the way they do business, except for the mafia was much more principled. And they actually had some scruples.
Wow.
The people that run us, it's organized crime with no scruples. And they will kill children, they'll rape, and they'll sex traffic kids. I have a lot in there about the Franklin credit scandal and all the other organized child sex trafficking that we know exists. And it's a lot in there. But
Let me just come out of nowhere with a question. If I was to Google celebrities or elites or government officials with black eyes, I would get a whole list. I would see George Bush. I would see the Pope. I would see Madonna. I would see John Kerry. Yeah. Now, either all these people are falling down and hitting themselves in the damn eye, or something to that. So my question to you is that a conspiracy?
Well, either that, or people like the Queen Elizabeth at 90-some years old is getting in fistfights. I don't think that's happening. So it's. The Black Eye Club is apparently related to adrenochrome, which is, if you don't know, adrenochrome is supposedly, and again, obviously I have no first-hand experience with this, thank goodness, but as the way I understand it is children especially secrete some kind of a thing called adrenochrome when they're really scared. So if they're being raped or under assault of rape, and that's why snuff films have always been so popular with the elite, supposedly. Because obviously the greatest terror, I guess, they could experience would know they're going to be killed. So a great deal of adrenochrome is released. And so I don't even know how they breathe it in or whatever, but apparently a side effect of the adrenochrome is a black eye. And that's what we hear. Now, to me, that's knowing that there is all these, from the McMartin preschool, the Franklin credit scandal, to Pizzagate, which I don't back down from. Something weird was going on there. I don't know what, but something. And we know that the late great Dave McGowan wrote something online you can still read called The Pedophocracy, he called it. He did a lot of great research on that. It's a real thing. I've had a couple of these young women on my radio show that were into that when they're lucky they got out, because it's kind of like you don't meet too many former prostitutes. Once you get in that business, you usually end up dead. You don't get out alive. And this is obviously much more serious than prostitution even. And most of them don't make it out alive. A few are, but they tell the kinds of stories that these are important people that enjoy this child sex trafficking. It's there because it's popular with the elite. They're willing to pay top dollar for it. And apparently it's not just because of sex. Apparently there is something, we've heard stories about the getting blood transfusions from young people and bathing in their blood, all the stuff they think makes them young. And I can't begin to understand it, but I just know there's a lot of evidence out there that indicates that this kind of stuff is going on. And most people really, it's the darkest thing I write about. And most people don't want to go there, even if they're into some other conspiracies. It's too, come on, I can't believe all these guys are. I can believe priests, or they'll believe that, but I can't believe these guys are doing it. Well, I don't think all these adults that tell about what happened to them as children, and they have a lot of consistency in their stories, the same kinds of things we see. I don't think they're all lying.
Well, now we clearly see Biden's mind is snapped. It's turned into mush. Is it that because he's in that club that it's manifested whenever he sees a little girl, he sniffs their hair, that he forgets where he is and just does?
Yeah.
The record of his daughter, I think, had where he was taking showers with her. And so is that what it is? His mind can't keep things straight?
Well, I think in Biden's case, I think he really probably has some kind of dimension. I think he's not able to. I think because of that, he can't control it. Because I think you don't see these other guys. You don't see people like Epstein. I don't think was doing that in public. But I think Biden, because of whatever he's got going on mentally, and we can see every time he tries to speak, he's struggling. So I think maybe he just breaks down and he doesn't realize he's talking to reporters when he's talking about his crunchy leg hairs and the kids like to touch him and all that. Guys, nobody would do that normally, especially a politician. But I think he clearly has something going on mentally that he can't. But obviously he has a predilection for it because you say he's constantly smelling these. Now, to be fair to him, he does this to women of all ages. It's not just little girls.
He's an equal opportunity offender, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Well, let me ask you something. Here's an obscure one for you. See if you caught up on this one here. I think it was there was an event where Hillary Clinton was there and she passed out. They drug her to this van, threw her in like a sack of potatoes. Her shoe came off. Yeah. But they didn't take her to the hospital. The woman running for president, they didn't take her. They took her to an apartment. And then all of a sudden she comes out, she looks 20 pounds lighter, her makeup's done, and there's no Secret Service around her. And a little girl comes up and says, "Hey, you're the greatest person ever." That did not look like the Hillary Clinton, that sack of potatoes thing that got taken in that thing. Somebody else came out. Is that conspiracy or what?
Well, that's when you really go down the rabbit hole. But certainly the Hillary Clinton that we saw in the 2016 campaign with her uncontrollable cough. And as you noticed, there was another time when she was like collapsing and they had to help her in, a couple times like that. She did not look to be in good shape at all. And of course, there were rumors in the conspiracy world that she's really dying. She has all this stuff, but she seemed to have recovered really well after that. And the Hillary Clinton we see today doesn't show any of those kind of traits. So I don't know. Do they have secret technology? Or you get people thinking that people think Biden's clone. People think that that sometimes they're clones. I don't know. I don't discount anything. I'm open to anything, but I think there's a lot more concrete areas we can show the corruption and the conspiracies out there than that. I mean, that's it's not saying it's not impossible, but certainly I would concentrate more on Hillary Clinton's life of crime and the fact that she's never been held accountable for it.
Well, Donald Jeffries, I've been doing this show since 2004. And what I've come to learn is this. Whatever the news says, believe the exact opposite and work your way back. Because most people believe what the news says, and then they have to work their way toward the truth after they've already internalized the deception. I say, just assume what you're hearing is deception the first time. Then, if it's true, it'll work its way back and prove it. But otherwise, you're going to go way off the rails, and you're going to be in prison. And you won't even know why. All right, let's get to a couple quick questions for you. Gavin Adams says, Don, did JFK make his secret society speech just before his assassination?
No. I think he made it. I think he actually made it early on in his presidency, 61 or 62. So, no, that's not the case. And it's a great speech. It's an incredible speech. But keep in mind that when he was talking about, he was basically describing communism at the time. Now, it applies to in many other ways, and people interpret it that way because it sounds like he's talking about the Illuminati or whatever. And he could be. That could have been speaking in code, but It's a wonderful speech, and yeah, I guess it would be more dramatic if he had made it right before his assassination. But no, I think it was relatively early on in his presidency. I don't hold me that for sure, but I know it wasn't made like right before his assassination or anything.
By the way, on our website, we do have a poll related to tonight's question, and particularly that question: who killed JFK? Of course, the usual suspects you can select from: Oswald, George Bush. Angry Democrats. That's my favorite, angry Democrats, because they've always been angry. The Illuminati, and an obscure one people may not know about that's listed in the who's who of freaks as Rafael Cruz, the Mafia, the military-industrial complex, Johnson, and the KGB. Let's check the results. Right now, 46%, Don says, George Bush and the CIA. What was he doing there? He forgot what he was doing there, remember? 20% says Illuminati. Only 6% say they're tied with angry Democrats, say Lee Harvey Oswald. Most people don't believe that the old Oswald man, the old goofball with his KGB training and old-style gun did anything.
Well, I'm amazed that 6% of your audience I'm amazed that anybody.
That's a little high. Is that a little high?
Yeah, watch it. If you're watching a show like this and you think Lee Harvey Oswald did it, I'm not sure. That's kind of conspiracy 101. Like I said, it got someone like me started down this path. So that's the one that's usually easiest to educate people on, because it took me as a teenager a few weeks, of research and reading some books and starting to read the testimony and evidence to realize, wow, this is a big lie. And it really. It opened me up, and it kind of, I guess, made me, for better or worse, the kind of guy I became, because it radicalized me. But I think that when people ask me who killed JFK, I always say, look, I think it was obviously very powerful forces in the government, and I think Oliver Stone's JFK got it pretty much right when he said it was something in the wind, and somebody had come, the Pentagon makes a call, and the CIA, people like Alan Dulles and the CIA. Maybe they used mafia shooters. Maybe they used French shooters. There's lots of. We don't know who probably never know who the shooters are.
I consider JFK really the original disruptor, and of course I think, and it is my opinion, that Donald Trump is the second most disruptor that we've ever had as a president. Ronald Reagan to some extent, but certainly Donald Trump. And I wonder how many things they've thrown at him, and how many accusations, false stories. Do you think, there's only one thing left that seems to be able to stop him, and I won't even mention it on the air, but do you think that he has any, and I don't know where you stand on supernatural stuff, but does he have protection?
Donald Trump, well, he has something, considering he's 75 years old and he allegedly drinks 12 Diet Cokes a day and lives on fast food, and he's overweight, and he seems to be in great shape. He has the greatest energy level, that you can. He's got dragon energy. Yeah, he really does. But again, I'm one of these guys. I'm a Trump agnostic, and we're the smallest minority group in the country. And I know I've lost lots of people, because when Trump ran for president originally, I was, obviously kind of gung ho about it. I was hoping, and I lost a lot of friends because of that. And I lost a few on the other side, because my feeling of Trump is that he did a lot of good just by saying the things he said. But the problem is that's pretty much all he did, or was able to do. You can look at it anyway. You can say, well, he wasn't able to do anything, but he didn't get anything done that important, significant, and that would have been closing the border, bringing the troops home. Really, he attempted to put some tariffs on China. He attempted a little bit in terms of free trade and bringing industry back, and he caught so much hell for that, even from people that had been on his side. People that were friends of mine. I said, wait a minute, were you for NAFTA now? Because Trump's personality, Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. There's no question about it, and I see it all the time. And it corrupted some good people, and I don't know why they can't look past that. But hey, what he certainly, if you look at what's happened since the election, and of course the election was but I prefer to say it was the most overt electoral fraud we've seen. But I wrote in Hidden History about vote scam that the Collier brothers talked about. This electoral fraud has been going on for a long time. It's just because Trump had such strong support from millions of people, they were paying more attention than they ever had. And, when they saw these things like votes coming in the middle of the night and of course the mail-in ballots, which was so obvious. And now you have the 2,000 mules. It's kind of documenting the when they were coming there. It was so overt. And then the fact that the courts wouldn't even look at it.
Right.
I mean, he lost in 60 out of 63 courts or something. I mean, what this should have shown people is the extent of the corruption and what's there, what we're faced with. So if Donald Trump, regardless of how sincere he was, one person, he proved one thing, and that's one person can't possibly take on this deep state. You need a lot more people. And his party, the Republicans, were the Republicucks is what I call them. They were largely worthless, and they're still largely worthless.
Did you say Republicans?
Republicucks. Cucks. C-U-C-K-S.
Oh, okay. I thought you said C-U-N-T-S.
No,
Same difference.
No, I didn't say that.
I would.
Big difference, yeah. Republicucks, because they're basically, if they were boxers, they would be constantly backpedaling. Well, and, maybe throw a counterpunch in once in a while.
Well, let me ask you this. Is this indicative of that, what you're discussing? I have a feeling that this fraud was of such a massive scale, but I'm telling you, I'm believing that on smaller scales has been going on for a long time. And here's why I think that. There are several states that have super Republican majorities in the legislature, but the people switched and voted for a Democrat governor. I mean, how is that? And let me tell you what's going on in Indiana. We have a supermajority legislature, and they just overruled the governor here, who's a Republican. But that guy, he's a Republican. He's a big old white pasty doughboy. And here's what's happening with him. He was invited to Davos, and they contributed $40,000 to his election campaign. And he's the one that kept Indiana in a lockdown. He is trying to get brownie points with this group. Either they're promising him re-election because nobody here wants to elect him. Nobody here likes him. But he is going to get our legislature has to override him because of his left-wing ideology. So I'm thinking either he's being groomed for the New World Order. If you're not a Democrat in there, then you're a Republican who's being groomed.
Well, I mean, you just look at. I talk about this all the time, and most people don't talk about it. I think why I have the audience I have is because I do mention things that nobody on the left or right is mentioning. And one of the things that we should talk about, regardless of what you think of Republicans or Democrats, I call them Republicrats. That's what I called them for years. Trump changed that a little bit. He really did, because now we're really divided. But if you look at every election, on average, like 95%, 96% of incumbents are reelected in every election. That's going back decades. And they're going to expect us to believe that the same people who public opinion polls say Congress has like a 5-6% approval rating, underused car salesmen, and yet they can't stop themselves from reelecting 96% of these clowns. I mean, who is reelecting Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and Chucky Schumer and Maxine Waters? I mean, who was Adam Schiff?
Right.
Who was reelecting these people? I mean, if they're counting the votes, I'm hoping that it's massive vote fraud, because I'm hoping they don't count the votes, because if they're really counting the votes, look what happened in the primaries for the Republicans. You had this guy Kemp in Georgia. Now he's right in the middle, the biggest rhino you're going to find, right in the middle of all the vote fraud. He was right there presiding over it. Now, Republicans in Georgia, I thought, were irate about the vote fraud, yet they couldn't help but give 73% to this guy, over the guy, I think, Perdue, that Trump endorsed. I mean, can that be real? I mean, and then you had Madison Cawthorn, one of the few. He seemed pretty good to me. Now, I think his tape came out supposedly, but I don't know. I thought that was a typical smear job, but he became one of the very, very few Republican incumbents who gets defeated in the primary. I don't know, man. I prefer to believe that they don't count the votes. That's what I want to believe. But the part of me says that, maybe Americans are that stupid. Maybe they don't have to, because the last 2 years ought to tell us that maybe how outnumbered we are. And you look at some of the things people have done for 2 years. maybe they are really voting Nancy Pelosi back in. I don't know.
I think they're still counting votes in Pennsylvania, man. I mean, why is it that Democrats run every election vote counting thing out there, man? I mean, they can kick people out, put boards up, shutter downs, claim water leaks. These people are freaking frauds. All right, let me recognize some people joining us in the live chat. Live Station Express, Freely Speaking, Casarelli and Heather for Yashua all have joined us. If you're watching this program on our YouTube channel, the chat's on the right. If you're watching this program on the website, the chat's on the upper left. Both of those are combined, and you can send questions into Donald Jeffries through that. Chris Holmes says, Donald, do you have books on Kindle?
Oh, yeah, all my books are on Kindle.
All right. And then speaking of freely speaking, how does the former Speaker of the House get convicted for child sex abuse against boys, yet none of his fellow lifelong Democrats were even aware of his deviancy?
Well, I think they probably were aware of it. And it's, I don't think I would imagine pedophiles in the general public, I've never known one, but I knew. I mean, maybe, of course, you never know behind closed doors. But I have to think it's a really small percentage of the population. But it seems to be a disproportionately large percentage of people in Congress, elected officials. Now, is that because they go after these guys and they purposely try to promote people that are blackmailable? So they know you get out of line. In the old days, they had a lot of gays. Mm-hmm. Now, being gay isn't a scandal anymore. It's embraced by the Democratic, and especially the Democrats. So they have to look for something like pedophiles or I don't know what could be worse than that. But
in the LGBTQRV BR549 group, right, if you're gay, you're almost a Republican. You're not deviant enough nowadays. You are not deviant enough. In fact, I had to shock some of the viewers earlier when I was doing something what I do call ranting points. I just go off on today's news. I had to inform them there's such a thing as fuzzies because I believe the Uvalde shooter may have been a fuzzy. Are you aware of what a fuzzy is?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, a fuzzy is a man, usually a gay man, and then another man who dresses up as an animal. And he walks them. When you see him walking them like with whips and chains, and then rapes them as they go along. Those are called fuzzies. There's fuzzy convention. Don't ask me how I know. I didn't go look for it. But they're in that brand new flag. If you've seen that new flag now, there's like a big V triangle in there. There's 15 other colors. It looks like a Photoshop palette now, color palette. Yeah. So they've lost the rainbow. The rainbow wasn't good enough for them, but you're practically straight. You're practically straight now if you're a gay in that group.
Oh yeah, it's old fashioned, traditional. Okay,
let's get to another question here. So, and he was talking about Democrats with boys. Remind me of Barney Frank. That dude's a loser. This is completely in left field, somewhere where you'd like to reside. What are your thoughts on the UFO and alien conspiracy?
Well, I'll probably write a book about that one day, and my novel, The Unreals, which is the first book I had published, my only fiction, that touches on that a lot. It kind of combines the conspiracy world, the JFK stuff with UFOs and Fortean phenomena. I'm very interested in that world, and I'm very suspicious of the fact that suddenly UFOs are becoming respectable. Congress is holding hearings on them. Again, this is my second most favorite subject as a teenager was UFOs beyond the JFK assassination. So when I wasn't reading about JFK, I was reading UFOs, Bermuda Triangle, that was very big back then, that kind of stuff, Fortean phenomena. And I'm very much aware of how people that saw UFOs or claimed to see UFOs back then were treated by the same media now that is embracing the same government that denied and lied and covered up about it. There's a little thing called Project Bluebeam out there. It's been around for a while, and a lot of us are scared that they're going to invoke that, and we're going to see a fake alien invasion. I don't predict, but I do find it very suspicious that suddenly UFOs, the same people that they made fun of, ruined their lives, ridiculed them for claiming they saw these things, now suddenly, hey, they're the coolest thing in the world. So I'm very skeptical about it.
Well, let's go to current events here real quick, and we'll go as our stream of consciousness dictates. But Uvalde's all in the news. Of course, gun control is about where it's all at now. Everything. Don't worry about your gas prices. Don't worry about baby formula. Don't worry about the border. Don't worry about World War III. Worry about getting guns out of the hands of honest, law-abiding citizens. Where are they going with this?
Well, it's you analyze these things, and typically, you mentioned earlier about the media. If they say something, you just assume it's the opposite. I assume, and having looked into Sandy Hook and Boston bombing and all those things, too much probably back when when you used to be able to have videos that dissected these events. I would tell people that in my book Bullyocracy, I wrote about the live shooter drills that they have in schools, and they have had for decades, and it's a part of the curriculum all across the country. And these live shooter drills are completely scripted. Your tax dollars pay for this, and they're politically correct scripted. So you're not going to see the shooter's never going to be a demented climate change activist or a transgender. It's always going to be a homeschool advocate, a gun nut, right, a demented Trump
MAGA
supporter. Right, MAGA, exactly, the MAGA hat. And they use crisis actors. Crisis actors exist. They are used for these events. Mm-hmm. They used fake blood. They employ police and EMT personnel who participate in it, and they never tell the children. So you think of something traumatic. I mean, if that had ever happened when my kids are in school, I would have been arrested. I'm sure I would have been a star of some YouTube video, getting tased by the police or shot by the police or something, because if that's not child abuse, I don't know what is. I mean, you're traumatizing an elementary school student. They think a live shooter's there, and it's a stupid drill. Sometimes they don't even tell the teachers. So my point is that knowing these things go on, it's not irresponsible. It's just a small step from there to say, well, maybe these events that you're reporting, maybe they're using crisis actors too. Maybe they're using fake blood, because you guys do it all the time. So it's not irresponsible, especially when you see all of the events in the Uvalde, Texas thing. Again, people should hope that was a hoax or a live drill, because if you look at the events, what was reported, it makes police officers look like maybe they should be defunded, because a bunch of them came and stood for an hour outside where kids were being shot in a school, and we're supposed to accept that. I mean, I can't believe that. Obviously, it looks like they did that, but I don't know, man. I saw one group, a mother and father that were interviewed, and they asked them what grade their daughter was in, and the mother said, "We don't know the grade." Is that possible? I don't know. I don't know any parent on the face of the earth that doesn't know what grade their kid is, but that's the kind of stuff you see in these events. So like you, when these things especially, well, anything, the state-controlled media, and they are state-controlled, they have no credibility at all. So anything they report, especially something like this, as you said, has such a clear and obvious agenda. I mean, it's basically, you barely hear the shooter's name. The gun is the villain. Right. We must get the gun. So the inanimate object is the bad guy here. It's so obvious that as soon as these things happen on cue, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I write on Substack all the time, and I just wrote a piece just the other day called "Do Something," and it was inspired by that. It's basically do something, and that's what happens after every one of these events. Right. The typical suspects say we have to do something, and we know what do something means. It means to take away more of our dwindling liberties.
I think. Freely Speaking can speak to that. With Australia, they had a mass shooter event, and then they said, hey, we got to do something, and took everybody's guns, and then now they've got tyrannical lockdowns, and they'll come after you, man, like there's no tomorrow. So all we got to do is look ahead to see what happens when there are no guns. Absolutely. But you talk about the person that didn't know the grade of their own child. Well, I believe it was the school board just reelected just yesterday or today, the chief of police said he did a great job. 19 dead kids, and he did a great job. I don't know. There's something wrong with that.
Yeah, and he told him to stand down. And so that's what I'm saying is that when taking these things on face value, and I'm believing the reporting of state-controlled media that lies about everything. They don't tell the truth about anything. So why would I assume they're telling the truth about this? Especially when it gets they might tell the truth about incidents that don't get much coverage, but something like this, when they're nationally reported, politicians, the media saying about do something, I don't believe anything they say. And obviously it's in those circumstances, you have to question how the narrative develops and how it changes. Wait a minute, was the door propped open? Were Border Patrol chasing him? How did he? Now, I was on a show earlier today, and you actually have even some mainstream media finally questioning the finances involved here, because we're told, I read that this kid, Ramos, was living in a 400 square foot apartment. He was living in abject poverty with his grandmother, sleeping on a mattress on the floor. So and he worked at Wendy's. Now, we're told they added up the ammo and the guns they claimed that he bought, and it was like $9,000. Now, I'm sorry, you can work at Wendy's your entire life and you're not going to be able to save $9,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So
Right.
that's not possible. And he also had a truck that was fairly expensive. So you factor that in. So maybe he had $15,000 at working there, living in abject poverty, and we're also told he couldn't drive. So where did the truck come from? I mean, so but nobody questions this.
No.
Except for people like me. They either claim you're crazy, you're harassing the parents if you question it. How am I harassing the parents by questioning that? That makes no sense. And then the other side will just focus on the guns. We have to do something. It's like, well, okay, the gun didn't do it by itself.
Well, sometimes they do say the quiet part out loud, like they said about the pandemic. That was the best thing ever happened to the Democratic Party. I mean, basically, it legitimized the drop box, and we know what happened as a result of that. But I understand that there was 48 lockdowns at that school because they're so close to the border, and the Border Patrol's been chasing killers and thugs and child traffickers through that city. And they locked the school down. But this day, hey, somebody gonna prop the door open. Okay, But I got good news for you, Donald Jeffries. The DOJ is investigating it, so that should assuage any concern that you have.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
I'll go by whatever they say.
Right. They'll straighten this thing out and tell us exactly what happened.
But you mentioned lockdowns, and one of the initial reports was that they had locked the school down before the shooting. They claimed the early reports said they were on lockdown status. Now, I don't know how that equates in a door being propped open. And then later, no, the door actually wasn't propped open. So again, what is the value of lockdowns, these nonsensical lockdowns, if a school shooting can happen during a lockdown? Now, when I wrote my article, I get good feedback. I had 3 people from Texas alone, parents whose kids are in those Texas schools, and they all told me the same thing. Security is so tight there. You try to go in the school, you have to be buzzed in as a parent. They have bulletproof glass at all the windows and the doors, and all the doors are locked at all times. They're on red alert all the time, and especially if they were under lockdown. I'm sorry, this is absolutely impossible. It doesn't equate with what I'm hearing and what people's experiences out there, and it obviously the idea that police officers, if the guy that you said he's the one that gave the order to stand down, or basically said it was a different, I forget, a barricade situation or something.
Yeah, barricade. Yeah, right.
And then we're told they waited out in the hall, and a janitor came and gave them the key. These are the same cops who kicked down doors at no-knock raids have been doing it forever. Many times the wrong residents, and they'll shoot first and ask questions later. Lots of people have been killed in those no-knock raids. They're all unconstitutional. But so these same police officers are going to calmly wait out in the hall while somebody's shooting kids, wait for a key from the janitor, and the janitor takes an hour to bring them the key. Right. I mean, none of it makes any sense. And if all that's true, every single one of those officers, I don't know if you can prosecute them, but they should be drummed out of law enforcement forever. Obviously, the police chief should be definitely thrown off the city council or whatever, and be shunned. And maybe he can work at Wendy's or something too.
Well, for one thing, that psycho asked his sister for some money, and she wouldn't give it to him. But all of a sudden, it comes out of nowhere 3 days before the NRA convention. Just saying. But you just reminded me. You reminded me of that shooting. I think it was in Las Vegas, where the one witness, the guy in the hotel, he gets shot in the leg, and he goes to Mexico. Yeah. And then the hotel says we put him up in a place in one of our own hotels for safety. What had happened to that guy? He was the witness, the only witness that there was. And so, I mean, he just goes off the radar. I mean, there's crazy stuff going on. Yeah. All right, let's get to a couple more questions for you. By the way, we want to welcome Gladys Kravitz and Robert Griffin to the program. Will Biden win the next election, or will Trump? Why? Or do you think there's a dark horse?
Well, when Trump was elected in 2016, I said it was such a shock to me that I said, like, I'm never making any predictions anymore politically, because I don't know what these guys are doing. And I never saw Joe Biden being the Democratic nominee and the president, because I thought he was the weakest candidate. His candidacy was dead. And then suddenly, he beats Bernie Sanders, all his candidates on Super Tuesday. Obviously a decision was made to just say, so to me, I don't know how but again, if they were counting the votes, how could he be elected? But if he runs against Trump, and that's why people that love Trump make the mistake when Trump brags that he would have won in a landslide. No, the country is utterly divided. There are probably 70, 80 million people who have Trump derangement syndrome to some degree in the country. Absolutely. And they would vote for anybody. They would vote for Charles Manson if he was, they would vote for a serial killer over Trump. If Hitler was alive, I think they would vote for Hitler over Trump. They hate Trump I've never seen anything like it. So the idea that he could have crushed anybody with those amount of voters is wrong. I still think he won, and there obviously was fraud, but I think it would have been a close race, and it's always going to be a close race. And you also can't forget how many millions of illegal immigrants have come across just since Biden was elected.
Yeah,
so they're all going to vote.
Yeah, we know what that game is, and we know just before the midterms he's going to have some executive order. Just boom. By the way, you can, if they're not already, they really don't need that executive order. They're going to do it anyway, and they're getting paid probably somewhere in those packets that they get. Is probably a Democrat voter card in there, and they probably get a reward for doing it. I mean, you can't put that kind of thing past. But I think Trump has a better chance of winning if he could get at least 15 or 16 circles. Joe Biden won was 13 circles wherever he went. I figure if Trump runs, he gets 16 or 17 circles, then he should be able to take care of this thing. All right, let's get to another question. This is again from Freely Speaking. Thanks for participating. Randy Quaid held a press conference talking about Hollywood star whackers, an extortion racket. Can you elaborate on that theory?
Yeah, well, I went into that a little bit. My latest book is called On Borrowed Fame, Money, Mysteries, and Corruption in the Entertainment World. It's a little bit different, but it still focuses on corruption. And there are lots of conspiracies in show business, too. So it's the same kind of things in body counts. Big body. Next to politics, Hollywood has the biggest body count out there, maybe a bigger one even. But Randy Quaid, great actor. He kind of went down the rabbit hole big time years ago. I'm not sure why. I think he's into conspiracies too. I'd love to contact him. I've been trying to through back channels, but he's not easy to find. But he came up with this theory, and having analyzed so many of these celebrity deaths that you just got, Bob Saget, for instance, recently, that's a star record death because he just makes no sense. I mean, his head was hit so hard it was like he fell 20 stories, and they claim he hit his head on the bed. Come on, ridiculous. But I don't know why they did it. I don't know anything about Saget being into any conspiracies or whatever. But that's the kind of stuff Randy Quaid talks. He thinks they just kill celebrities, and maybe they do it just to make news, to get people talking. I don't know. Maybe it's part of the job there, but there's so many people in the entertainment business that die under those bizarre circumstances. And, in my book, you'll see it's the same kind of thing I wrote about in Hidden History for Politics, where suicides that obviously weren't suicides, shot twice in the back of the head and things like that. You'll see that kind of stuff. You'll see overkill, where you'll see, some rock star's ex-girlfriend stabbed 60 times or something. It doesn't happen outside of that industry. So something is going on there. And it bears scrutiny, but I know nothing more than that. I'd love to talk to Randy Quaid more about it, though. Yeah,
and then you talk about overkill. That would be like a Seth Rich case. Well, how many times did that guy get shot, and they never even took his stuff? And then they're got an obscure one for you. Check your memory banks. I believe it was Ron Brown got killed on an airplane.
Absolutely,
and he was what I remember was he was under indictment, like 75 charges or something, and he was quoted as saying, "If I go down, Clinton's going down." But when that plane crashed, they said they found his body sitting next to a rock with a bullet hole in his head. So
with his bullet hole, I detailed all that hidden history. I go into the Ron Brown death, and it's interesting. When I was on, I think it was Red Pill 78 show with Zach. Year or two ago, and somebody called into the show and said he was Ron Brown's cousin, I think, or nephew or something. And it was really cool because he was saying that, nobody in our family believes that. They think he was murdered too. And he absolutely was. And it's because he was going to talk. I mean, Ron Brown was not a good guy. He's like a mafia guy, thoroughly corrupt. But he did say that. I'm not going down by myself, because he was under, and you had another, and these deaths have deaths associated with them. So he had some woman that worked with him in the Commerce Department, I think, who's, get this, her body was found naked, dead, I think tied up in a closet or something in the Commerce Department. I don't think anybody's ever been found under those circumstances in the Commerce Department. So that's the kind of world they live in. It's worse than the mafia. And the problem is, every time it happens, and readers can read my hidden history books and see, wow, it's like, there's so many of them, and I can't catch them all. I mean, but just the amount I have, the fact that nobody thinks anything is suspicious, and they think you're crazy if you talk about it. We don't know anybody in our lives that happens to, but it happens all. If you knew the Clintons alone.
Right. Well, that goes back to the first hour when I said, "What's with everybody in the black eyes?" I don't know anybody who's ever had a black eye since I was a kid, and he punched me in the eye, and I punched him in the eye, and I was 13. So I haven't seen a person with a black eye since. But now, man, you can just Google it, and all these world elites are doing it. But there's so many conspiracies to pick from, but they paint a larger picture. That there must be an end goal. Is this what they call the Great Reset? Is this sort of the end goal of everything, and even starting with the JFK, going to 9/11 and, Oklahoma City and, Randy Weaver? Are they building up and the mass shootings here and there? Is somebody got a grid or a book or a plan, and those are leading up to this Great Reset?
Well, I think they have a plan, and right now, as you speak, they're holding their yearly Bilderberg meeting, and that's people want to think there's a conspiracy. That's one of the biggest indications that there is some kind of grand conspiracy, because you have the movers and shakers from all over the world, including royalty, meet together in secrecy every year behind closed doors to discuss nothing. We're told, to the absolute silence of the mainstream media, but. I'm like Winston Smith in 1984, Orwell's hero. He asked at that time, he asked why. He said, I can see what's going on, but why? And that's I've been asking that all my life. Once I realized what was happening, I realized these people are utterly corrupt. They're criminals. They're the worst organized crime figures ever, because they don't have the morality of the average mobster. They're absolutely reprehensible people, the worst people on earth. But they have absolute power. I mean, the last 2 years, once they shut the world down and the majority rolled over and played dead and put on their stupid little masks and kept their 6-foot social distancing, and they shut down small business. They stopped people from going to church. They utterly wrecked the economy. They did everything, and there was barely a whimper of protest. So at this point, they should be feeling great about this. So why they're trying to, and they are obviously trying to collapse it. Why they want to destroy this, I don't know. I don't know what the why is, because to me it seems like they have the greatest situation anybody could have. They have us utterly under their control. They have ultimate power. They're grabbing all the wealth. We're basically becoming a bunch of serfs, a bunch of peasants. And I don't know why they would want to wreck this, but they undoubtedly are. They're making things collapse. But I don't know. I don't know what the ultimate why is any more than Winston Smith did. I can only speculate that it's maybe, again, there are really evil forces involved behind it, satanic forces that maybe we can't comprehend. But I think there's something supernatural. I don't think it's just because earthly motivations, they've achieved all that. They have everything you could have on Earth. So I think it has to be something beyond it. But I really ultimately don't know.
It seems like where that sort of leads. I remember when I went to what's called a Gen 6 conference in Branson, Missouri, and one of the speakers there was talking about the Skinwalker Ranch, but he said the more he investigates these things as are happening, the more he is coming to the understanding and belief that there's a supernatural element to these things behind, in the larger picture. Now, the normal mind, we look at these things, surely politicians aren't raping kids. Surely they're not trying to destroy this country. Surely they're not grooming little kids in second grade. You has to be a complete, the normal mind can't receive that. And so it looks confusing because you look for the common sense answer. Well, somebody just hates him, so he just wrote a hit piece, and that with that little kid, little Johnny, he's really little Mary, somebody's trying to help him, because the mind can't get to that level of depravity. And so the only real answer for that is you've got to veer, because it isn't normal. You've got to go into a supernatural area to find out how evil. There must be some completely heinous, soulless evil behind this whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to look at it, because J. Edgar Hoover, of all people, back then it said, when he's talking about the communist conspiracy, he said, the average person can't comprehend the extent of this. They can't, especially when you talk about something like child sex trafficking. Even people that might, be open to JFK or even 9/11, that's too much for them. That's why they recoiled so much of the Pizzagate thing. they don't want to believe that. Maybe they don't want to believe that there's that much evil in the world, but it's there. The evidence is undeniable, and we don't know why that is. Why, but that's the problem. Is that we got to this point, I think, because, and that's why I think if people read my history books, going back as Crimes and Cover-Ups, and the prequel to this went back to the founding of the Republic. And in Hidden History 3, I'll kind of examine things from all eras. But if you look, all these things happened. We didn't get to this place where we are today by accident. We didn't get to this state of tyranny, this desperation, things collapsing. It happened because the American public forever has been apathetic, has been dumbed down, stupid, compliant. Really, since the founding fathers generation, they were the last generation that was really, willing to fight. Since then, we've rolled over and played dead, and we've allowed these transgressions every time. So Kennedy gets killed. Nobody cares. All you have to know, even something like that, where the polls have shown from the beginning that 80% of the American people don't buy that Oswald did it, but almost the same amount of percentage of people, if you ask them, should we have a new investigation of the assassination of President Kennedy, say no. So they're satisfied with the lie. I mean, I don't know how you possibly, it's like Congress having a 6% approval rate, but you vote 96% of them back in every election. Mm-hmm. If that's legitimate, I don't know. And I'm beginning more and more to think that people really are that stupid, because mm-hmm. I've seen what has happened during the pandemic, and I've seen how many people, I've been canceled by members of my family because I won't get vaccinated. And I see how people have acted about this. And I'm beginning to think, maybe these people are voting these people in. Mm-hmm. Maybe they really mm-hmm. do. Yeah. This is, and so, and I think that's more terrifying. I'd rather believe that they're being, but to think that. So then, what do you do then? I mean, how can you possibly fight that?
This vaccination derangement syndrome is what it is, and these are the people you see driving down the road with a mask on, or yes. riding their bicycle with a mask on. They're trying to show how obedient they are. It's yes. really disgusting. They don't have any idea what freedom is. But we could talk about going down the slippery slope. We could start with abortion. Surely you don't want back alley abortions with coat hangers. And so now we go down a slippery slope to where we are now, which in New Jersey are saying yes. that a baby can come out while they have this like druid type conversation with this baby out. And this is what during the gubernatorial thing a couple of years back. And they said they'll have a conversation with a doctor, and then they'll have a conversation with whoever else after the baby's yeah. out. Just like yeah. druids around going, oh. Yeah. Okay, so that's where that went, right? And then surely you're all about love, aren't you? Just two people, they just want to cohabitate. That's all they want to do. Just because wait a minute. Now they need to get married too. Okay. Well, wait a minute. Now they need to get kids. Now we're at drag queens in the public libraries, in the schools at age 2 and 3, twerking in front of little kids. That's where we're at with that. So, and then you talk about elections. Well, surely you want everybody to be elected. Now we have mail drop boxes with videos of people stuffing them in and jamming the machines. So I said all that to say this. We're right now at this crossroads, and it's guns. And people are saying, well, they weapons of war. Nobody needs a weapons of war. Biden said, you couldn't buy a cannonball in 1776. Well, yes, you could. Nobody wanted to buy a cannonball. He doesn't know that. That's slippery mind anyway. But they're just saying it's the AR-15, the evil looking guns. But we got to know that's not it. That is not it. If we don't draw that line there, it's the handguns. They've already said that which should not be spoken. They said 9mm. So that's already slipped out. They said the quiet part out there. And now we got Beto O'Rourke, or Beta Male O'Rourke. He's trying to ride this thing and, trying to get his numbers up. But if that AR-15 gets in, it's all guns.
Yeah, and speaking of the worst people on earth, Beto O'Rourke, but that's the kind of people in charge of us. But the Second Amendment, it's the same kind of thing. I'm a free speech purist. I'm a civil libertarian. There's almost no civil libertarians left in America today who believe in the Bill of Rights with all our hearts, and will defend it for everyone. We all have these rights. And these are God given. But this is the problem: is that the founders, when they came up with the Bill of Rights, they said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that they come from God. that these rights come from God. Well, you probably have, I don't know what the percentage of is America that don't believe in God, but it's millions of people. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of the ones that are in charge that have positions of power. So how do you sell them on God-given rights when they don't believe in God? So those rights mean nothing to them. Mm-hmm. And so and the debate is over when you get to the point where you have people, and millions of people in this country now believe that men can get pregnant. Mm-hmm. This is that men can have babies. And I've met them, and it's how do you have a discussion? You might as well go to the local mental institution and talk to the guy who thinks he's Napoleon. Be more interesting. That's the problem that you have, that we've reached that stage. Mm-hmm. when you're putting codexes in boys' bathrooms in schools. They're doing that now. Mm-hmm. And you talked about after-birth abortion. Well, they've had a guy, I've talked about him for years, that I think he's Princeton. He's one of the Ivy League universities, and he's a tenured professor. For years, he's been advocating after-birth abortion. Well, his dream is finally coming true. The law they passed in California recently, supposedly, I don't know, I've heard all things, that supposedly they claim that it can be read in a way that it gives the mother, it's always the mother, it's never the father, even after it's born, gives the mother the right to kill her baby up to 30 days after it's born. Now, just think of that. And the guy at the Ivy League University, and it's as you said, starts with coat hanger abortions. This is gradualism. And eventually gets to, so if they get to that point, then it's going to be, and they've already bandied this term about, remember it, age of viability. So they say, the child was not at the age of viable. When would the age of viability be? No 2 or 3 year old. They're not viable. I mean, 4, 5, 6. They're not viable. They can't go live independently. So they're trying to give mothers, not because again, it's always about turning the sexes against each other. And if you look at all those cases of absolute child abuse, where parents are trying to force their little boys, and it's almost always little boys, to be little girls when they're in kindergarten.
What is that?
When they don't even know what sex is. It's almost all the court cases that it resulted in. Every one I've heard of, the mother's been the one that wants to change the sex, and the father's trying to hang on to some kind of sense, some sense. And this is a horrible situation we have, because it's something like abortion. And again, abortion's it's not one of my top issues. But the problem is, once you see that the Supreme Court recent decision, it brings out the madness, and you see how deranged the majority of American females are over this issue. And of course, it's associated with issues, and so they're more than likely they're for some reason they don't see any kind of inconsistency. So I've tried to say, let's try to set this stuff against each other to get it to explode. But somehow they can accept a woman has a right to choose, but you or I could just say we're a woman too.
Right.
So don't we have the right to choose too? So I mean,
hey Don, we didn't have formula shortage until men started getting pregnant. So that's right. I'm just saying that's where that came from. Gladys says, what are your thoughts on what really happened to Phil Haney?
Phil Haney, is that the UFO guy?
I don't know. Need a clarification on that. Let's get to what we think about that and get another quick question. What happened to Loretta Fuddy and the infamous plane crash in Hawaii? How does it link to Obama?
Well,
don't forget that one.
And that's where Donald Trump first really caught my attention, because he tweeted out, afterwards, because Loretta Fuddy was the individual who supposedly verified that ridiculous, what seemed to most of us forgery of a birth certificate to prove that Obama was born in this country, came out, and she was in a plane crash. And it's usually not, I haven't heard of too many plane crashes where there was just one fatality. She was the only one that died. And Trump tweeted that out, woman who, his typical style, woman who verifies Trump's birth certificate, only fatality in a plane crash. Very strange! ! But then this is Donald Trump. Right. What happens after he becomes president? He holds a press conference and says, "But Barack Obama was born in this country." Period. That's what I'm talking about. So he obviously, Roger Stone, who wrote the foreword to Hidden History, the paperback edition, he contacted me early on before, and I really didn't even know who he was, and he had read Hidden History and loved it, and we talked on the phone, and he told me about Donald Trump, who was just announcing for president then. And he had been friends with him for 30 years. And he said, you're going to love this guy. He knows about all the conspiracies. And I know he does. But again, he did nothing You know, he knows all this is a lie. I mean, I can tell you from Roger Stone, and yet people don't know about Brett Kavanaugh, for instance. One of his Supreme Court appointments who are all disappointing, but Kavanaugh lost in the thing about the absurd thing about what he might have done to some girl when he was in high school or college, and she couldn't even remember the day or the time. The most ridiculous thing you've ever heard. Right. Again, people believed her. You know, how do you possibly come up with an alibi if your accuser can't tell you where and when it happened? Mm-hmm. Pretty hard to have an alibi, isn't it? But that's what we had there. But Kavanaugh was involved with Kenneth Starr's absurd whitewash of an investigation of Bill Clinton. He was in charge of the Vince Foster. The whitewash there. And Trump had earlier, one of his many things where he would tweet out to let you know he knows, he goes, a lot of people think Vince Foster was murdered. He knows that. But then he appoints Kavanaugh. So that's Trump, man. And that's why I'm agnostic on him, because he does that stuff all the time. It's a consistent pattern.
Well, we talked about Loretta Fuddy and the plane crash where she's the one that dies. What about these plane crashing into... and the fires of all these food manufacturing plants?
Yes.
This is conspiracy number 3-4-5-6, man. Come on.
Well, I mean, it's what are the odds? I mean, I would like to have some statistics on how many planes ever crashed into food storage facilities before. Mm-hmm. And they've had two, or is it two or three? I think that have had, and all the fires have happened too. I mean, and you would think, I've talked about this recently, if after the first couple that happened, especially if there's a food shortage coming, and of course these happened right after Joe Biden assured us, there's going to be a food shortage. Okay, well now there is, but you would think that there would be tight security, wouldn't you? That hey man, we got to be careful here, man. We can't have any fires at this facility, or apparently not, because they're still burning. So but that's what I'm talking about. That's why I don't have much confidence, because it's just people like us are questioning it. We know the people that are awake are questioning, and there are millions of people that are awake, but the problem is there are many more millions that are not awake, and this doesn't matter to them. You can tell that story, and they'll still be talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. That's where their minds are at.
I think the latest one was a chicken farm in Michigan, and lost 350,000 birds. No cause yet determined. There was one right here in Indiana. The Plainfield distribution plant burned down. I mean, what's the odds? I just want to know, do we have 20 or 30 manufacturing distribution centers for food burned down every year? And it's normal, kind of like the California fires, which, by the way, here's another conspiracy. Man, I'm telling you, somebody's setting those fires. They've caught so many people. Yes. They catch so many arsonists, and then they just let them go, and they go out and burn the same day. That kind of works out. Now, somebody suggested that that they're actually burning the fires to increase the particulates in the sky to lower the Earth temperature. So they've justified eliminating the forest so they can fix global warming. Let me tell you something. I'm in Indiana. We're running at 75 degrees here in June, and it should be 85, 95. So we got global cooling going on over here. Yeah. All right, here's another question for you. What is the main reason MLK had to be snuffed out? Was it to ensure racial disharmony continued in American society?
Well, I can only speculate on that. I think that certainly in MLK's case, and the best evidence, and most people know, I'll be talking about that in Hidden History 3. There were witnesses who reported that he was not killed by the gunshot when he was taken for treatment in the emergency room. There are witnesses who saw, and they named the doctors. They saw doctors putting a pillow over his face and suffocating him to death. Now, you're not going to hear that on the same news that we think would worship Martin Luther King. They don't. But I personally believe that Martin Luther King was killed as a warning to Robert Kennedy, much as Marilyn Monroe was killed as a warning to John F. Kennedy. And I that's what I think. I don't know. I'm speculating there. And certainly J. Edgar Hoover was a man of his time. He was a racist, I'm sure, behind the scenes. And we know that J. Edgar Hoover, that the FBI sent a letter to King, before that, where they basically said, there's only one thing left for you to do. They basically told him he had to kill himself. And so that's out there in the public record. So and King had recently changed a bit. He's gone outside civil rights, and he had become a big vocal anti-war activist.
Mhm.
And I think they might have been threatened by the Poor People's March in Washington, because that when you have that many, just as the powers that be, if you could get millions of people marching in Washington D.C., the millions of fed up people with the tyranny, that's frightening to them. And I think there may have been some fear there, but I'm only speculating. All I know is that James Earl Ray definitely didn't do it. There's no question about that. That's
well. Speaking of pillows, wasn't it Supreme Court Justice Alito that killed himself with a pillow?
He was found with a pillow. Yeah.
He killed himself with a pillow. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Very strange.
That was messy. And I tell you what, My Pillow Man didn't have anything to do with that. All right. That was a free one for you. All right. All right. So then we have the question of the officialdom said a plane crashed in Shanksville on 9/11, but there wasn't a trace of the crashed plane. What was in that hole?
Yeah, I'll be going into in Hidden History 3. I really go into depth on that. And there's so many stories about. You're right. People saw another plane flying around. Most witnesses have said there was certainly not enough wreckage to be a plane. Some people said there was nothing. I think the official version ended up being that the plane somehow bore down to the ground and was obliterated. It was just nonsense. It never happened before. But people will be able to read all about what I found in Hidden History 3. But suffice to say that, again, nothing about that day, 9/11, makes any sense. And I think the record shows that whatever happened in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, either the government shot down a plane and lied about it, or it was, who knows, the planes were routed somewhere else. There's also evidence out there that said Flight 93 landed in Cleveland. And I have the testimony, the mayor, and everything. All that'll be in the book there. I don't know what that means, but it's pretty detailed. Now, what does that mean? I don't know, and it doesn't seem like. But there's lots of strange eyewitness testimony, needless to say, from Shanksville and 9/11. Much as JFK assassination was the kind of the thing that set off boomers, the first, that we first, really started getting suspicious of something. 9/11 is like the people that are the millennials, and maybe definitely that's their JFK assassination, because it's so obvious. I mean, we're talking 7, and
we're talking about the possibility of evil on a scale that is unimaginable, but is quite real. In that frame, is it plausible to think that somebody would actually want to start World War III?
Well, you hear a lot of people talking about it and acting like they do want to start it. What does that mean? I think, again, World War III, it hasn't happened, and I know people. That's why I don't predict things, because a couple of months ago, people were just, World War III is coming, and it certainly looked like it. But it never seems to happen. So, I mean, I don't know if they're going to keep up the COVID thing, if monkeypox is going to be a thing, or they're going to come up with something else because they've shown they can shut us down. Or if they're going to go to their old tried and true standard of a war, another world war.
Hey, Donald Jeffries, from your website, anything that you do involved with, do you sell gold?
No, I don't. But Tony Arterburn, who produces one of my radio shows, Wise Wolf, Silver and Gold, I would recommend him for that.
Would you say that's something to have for an extinction level event?
Well, that's what everybody tells me. I can't pretend to understand that, because I just as a non-expert, I don't know what any commodity would necessarily be worth in a Mad Max.
You can't make a sandwich out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. But I mean, people believe that strongly. Like my friend Tony, that gold and silver are the things you want. I mean, I am prepping to a certain degree, and right now I'm looking. I got to get a backup generator and figure the best deal for that. And we're stocking food and water, and I think we need to do that, because there's. But again, I don't predict it. And a lot of times they back off these things, and people think things are going to happen, and then they don't. And so that's why I don't. People like Alex Jones, make so many predictions, and then people can make fun of them later and say, look at all the predictions we had at Y2K, what was going to happen. So I don't.
Yeah, I want my money back on that one.
Yeah. And I think the people in charge just I know they're bad, and the only prediction I make at this point is that whatever happens, whatever they do, it's not going to make things better for most of the people. Now you can take that to the bank. Whatever happens will not make things.
And you're sticking to that one, okay? You're making that definitive statement. Somebody asked if you have a website, and of course you do. And there's a link in your bio section on our website. All you got to do is click on that link and go right to his website there.
Yes.
So one of my favorite tests, if somebody is awake or woke, is a simple 9/11 question: how many buildings went down? If somebody says 2, they're woke. If they say the true number, then they're awake. And from that, you can infer that they are awake on some other issues, because if they know that means they haven't been deceived. How do you suggest people sort of inoculate themselves from the disinformation campaign that is relentlessly in our face every single day in every source?
Well, the way I approach it is I never back down from anything. So I try to be consistent. So if somebody says, I'm not afraid to talk about Sandy Hook. I'm not afraid. I had a guy, the flat Earth guy, on my show a couple weeks ago. So there's millions of people that believe that now. So I don't moon hoax people. I'm open to everything because I know we've been lied to about everything, and I think there's so much infighting, and I've experienced it from the JFK assassination community, 9/11, people with Alex Jones and people like that. There's so many that are on the same page, and I try to form a coalition with people, anybody. If you understand that we're living under tyranny, you understand we're being lied to. We can disagree about little things, but we have to come together, because every time we say, well, I'm not going to, Alex Jones is a disinfo agent, or somebody else is, David Icke is, or whatever. Some of them are. I'm sure some of them are. We know Cass Sunstein and the CIA's been doing this for years. In my book, Hidden History, I talked about how many assets they placed in the Black Panthers and the KKK. They've been doing it forever. We saw what happened on January 6th. We had tons and tons of undercover agents there. Everybody knows that. And but I think the important thing is to try to get together, to get the people that are awake to any degree, and try to get them to come together, understand we can do better than this. And to try to be positive about it, to say that we can. Obviously, you really think this is the best that we can do? These people leading us, I mean, these are hard. We have corruption and we have incompetence. And it's a terrible mixture. And now we have a third ingredient thrown in, and that's madness. Because a lot of these, when you're having people in positions of power that say that men can have babies, that's madness. And we're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, they can't. Right, and they can't define what a woman is. Unbelievable. They start stuttering. They don't know what to say, but they can't say what a woman is. It's like, man, and men can get pregnant. You talk about gaslighting. The Democrats saying that Republicans are against funding the police. They just gaslight. They say these most ridiculous things. Biden's out there saying that Americans are so happy with the way the economy is going, and they're just. I'm thinking, what planet is? They just say this stuff, and to your point, a significant amount of people believe that. It's a work uphill to bring that kind of truth. So, what would be your little nugget to try to get somebody to get them out of the matrix goo? What would be the first little tug you think that you can just start pulling a little bit, take the blinders off?
Well, the first thing I would tell people is to not, because right now, I started out as a Democrat many years ago. I was a liberal, very radical guy, and over the years I've seen that at this point, Republicans are less dangerous. Okay, definitely. They're definitely less dangerous. The Democrats are largely insane at this point. So I would say, if you're going to have an opposition, apparently right now it's got to run through the Republicans. You have to demand better of the Republicans. You're not going. The Democrats are they're a lost cause. They're insane. But if you're going to try to get through to the Republicans, you have to demand better. You can't keep electing these rhinos. And if you do, if they get elected, then you need to start vocally saying, how did they get, we didn't elect them. You have to demand better, because without any opposition, you've got, I don't know how many political prisoners we still have in Washington, D.C. from January 6th. And I talk about them all the time, trying to get one on my show. But it's unconscionable that there are no civil libertarians, except for people like me that come from the left, that are talking about that. These people have been denied due process. They've been in prison for over a year for really nothing. But even if you accept the premise, it's misdemeanors. And nobody's talking about that. Every single Republican in Congress, every single one should be marching and protesting about that, because that's what the Democrats should do.
Right.
They don't. You have a couple of them do it. The rest of them, they're just being silent. And this is why I used to call the Democrats the evil party and the Republicans the stupid party. And the Democrats are more evil than ever, and the Republicans are more stupid than ever, because they continue to allow this to happen, and they're just so ineffective. And I don't like either party, but that's our hope right now lies in Republicans, believe it or not.
So the J6 people, they don't get the right to the speedy trial. No. They're under cruel and unusual punishment, and they don't have the right representation. It's like it's insane that anybody in this country, and some of them haven't even been charged with a crime.
No, and this is where, again, I blame Donald Trump. Donald Trump is holding his rallies. He never mentioned he should begin every rally. Those people are there because of him, because they want to stop the steal.
That is true.
And so he doesn't talk about them. Instead, he keeps bragging about himself, and he's raised, I don't know, a couple $100 million. Think maybe you could throw a few million their way so they can get legal representation? If he doesn't make it an issue, who's going to? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was done under him. He's still saying he was robbed, which he was, but those people are paying the price. He's not in jail. They are. And I when he starts talking out again, I'll give him credit if he does that, but he hasn't done it, and very few other Republicans have either. They've been forgotten.
Mm-hmm. I did hear him at a rally mention him, at least in some cursory way. But I think one of Trump's attorneys was just arrested by the FBI for refusing to testify from the J6 committee. He was subpoenaed. But so was Eric Holder was subpoenaed when he was running guns down to Mexico. Right. He just said "F you" and walked away. But if you're a Trump guy, you get hauled, you get frog walked to the jail. I mean, there's two levels of justice here.
And that's the difference, though, isn't it? The Democrats would just say "F you" and go in. The Republicans go in. And Peter Navarro, you're talking about him. Mm-hmm. He was actually, I was at a book launch party for Naomi Wolf's new book, great book. This past Tuesday, and Peter Navarro was there, and I wasn't sure who Peter Navarro was. I was mixing up the name. I wish I'd gone and talked to him, because I think he was arrested the next day. But again, this is happening, and nobody cares, and it's all because, as I said, millions of people have Trump derangement syndrome, and I know from talking about the J6 defendants, a lot of people who I considered friends and good people on the left. They think those people aren't being punished enough, and they probably want them executed. But and it's all because they hate Trump so much, and we have to deal with that. That hatred is very real out there. I don't know how you fight it other than this. We have to try to be as aggressive as they are, and we have to be more confident and stop backpedaling and apologizing for stuff.
Well, that is exactly true. It's time to take a stand, man. You got to stand for something, or you'll fall for anything. Let's get to the final question out of the live chat from Paul Sishi. Do you think there will be a second bioweapon released?
Well, I don't know what the first one was still, and we know they have bioweapons labs over in the Ukraine. America's admitted we have them there. We certainly know they've been doing these kinds of things at Fort Detrick, Maryland, and with what happened with AIDS, a lot of that is still unknown. Anthony Fauci was in the center of that as well. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, to tell you the truth, I think at this point, if they can just keep claiming there's a new strain of COVID, because that's what basically they're doing, and all they have to do is say and nobody's questioning the science. I mean, I don't know any virus that's ever been like this in the history of the world. It's going on over 2 years now. What happened to COVID-20 and COVID-21? COVID-19 was the 2019 strain. Nobody mentions that. Wait a minute. This isn't science. These viruses are supposed to burn out in the heat. This one doesn't. It just keeps coming back. You might have it in the. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't trust any of it. I don't know how much of it is real to whatever degree. Mm-hmm. But at this point, I don't know what they're going to do. But again, my one prediction I can make is whatever they do, it won't make things better for the vast majority of the people.
Don, it sounds to me like you're not going to take the monkeypox vaccination.
No.
Sounds like you're disinfo.
Any other vaccination.
Sounds you're a little disinfo on that there, man. Well, hey, I tell you what positive thing can we leave with this audience here?
Well, I believe that this is a spiritual battle. I believe we're engaged, and I think this is the great battle of all the ages, because I think there is something to, maybe end times are coming up, and I think that our problems are so bad, the tyranny is so bad, the corruption is so bad. I think it's beyond human repair, and I think that's why it's more important than ever to have our faith, and to know that we believe in Jesus, we believe in God. And to know that ultimately we have the greatest power on our side. I think that's the only hope you can have, because who are you going to hope for here on earth? I mean, everybody that's in a position of power is corrupt. We saw what happened when Donald Trump was in there for 4 years. He was the president of the United States, and nothing could get done. I don't know that you could find somebody that could go in and have, against, when you're looking at what they're facing, the systemic corruption everywhere at all levels. So I think more than ever, my faith is emboldened that you look to a greater power. And that's the only thing I can tell you, is keep your faith and know that eventually we believe that we'll prevail. Goodness will prevail. And that's what you have to believe that.
Well, certainly the Continental Army was against tremendous odds, underfunded and undermanned and under-equipped. So there are miracles that occur and have occurred in this country. There have been great awakenings and great revivals come out of nowhere and sweep the country. That could happen at any time. So I think it is good that we need to remain positive, but be aware, stay awake, find information, but not let fear rule us. But that doesn't mean lack of action. Each one of us has a part in the struggle against good and evil. It's the classic biblical tale of good versus evil, and we know whose side God is on. We want to make sure we're on his side. Donald Jeffries, I appreciate you coming on the Edge broadcast. Can we have you on again sometime?
Absolutely. Whenever you want me, I'd be proud to be on. Again, the website is donaldjeffries.media. It's brand new, but you can find out everything about me that you need to find there. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. I appreciate you coming on the show, sir.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.